What up, second grade? It's Miss Carl. Today we're going to be working on summarizing. Summarizing is whenever you take a passage or a story and you retell it in your own words. But you want to make sure that you only include the important details and the important things that need to be included that help move the story along. In your summary, you don't want to include a bunch of details that don't really matter or really help tell the story. So you might be wondering, what's the point of summarizing? So let's say, for example, I had a really long morning going into school. This happened, that happened, it was a crazy morning. Maybe if I go to tell the story to my coworker, a fellow teacher, I'm going to only include the important parts that happen, the important things that happen. I'm not going to mention every single little detail because that's not what summarizing is about. Summarizing is giving a short little blurb about what happened, and you only include the important details and the important information that needs included that the reader needs to know if they want to know about the story or the passage, and you want to make sure that you summarize in your own words. You don't want to be copying or taking anything directly from the passage. Now, you might be wondering, why is this important? And whenever we summarize, that can help us learn maybe what we read, maybe where we were a little confused about what we read. And when we summarize it in our head, it makes sense. It also can help us remember what we read. Maybe we read a passage and then we summarize it, and it might stick with us for a little bit longer and help us remember what happened. So that's why summarizing is really, really important. So I have a little story today, and what we're going to do is there's 3 chapters. We're going to read chapter 1. I'm going to summarize it in my own words, talk to you about why I picked what I included in my summarization, why I did it that way. The second one, same thing. In the 3rd chapter, I'm going to challenge you to come up with your own summary so that you guys can get some practice summarizing as well. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So our story is Digging for Sue. All right, I'm going to go start reading chapter 1. Chapter 1, The Mighty T-Rex. Tyrannosaurus rex were huge animals. They walked on 2 legs. They once ruled Earth. That was millions of years ago. How do we know this? We know this from scientific studies of T-Rex fossils. An important discovery of T-Rex fossils took place in 1990. It led to more information about these dinosaurs. Tyrannosaurus rex means king of the tyrant lizards. In 1990, Sue Hendrickson was part of an exploration. Her team was in South Dakota. They were looking for fossils. One day, Sue walked to some nearby cliffs. She saw a few bones on the ground. She saw some huge bones stuck in a cliff. Sue guessed that the bones had probably belonged to a T-Rex. Sue made her discovery right before the end of her trip. So that was chapter 1. So if I read this and maybe you didn't get to read it and you looked at me and said, "Hey, Miss Carl, what happened in this chapter?" I would give you a summary. I would probably give you my summary by saying, there was a scientist named Sue. She was part of a team, and they found Tyrannosaurus rex fossils. They were able to use those fossils to learn more about T-Rexes. I think that does a nice job of summing up the passage because we learned that Sue and her team found the T-Rex bones, and we learned that those bones were able to help us learn more about what a T-Rex was. And I was able to summarize, so I made it smaller to see how many sentences we actually read. I was able to summarize it, condense it down into only a couple sentences, and I was able to put it into my own words. All right, we're going to read chapter 2 now and do some more practice with this. Chapter 2, The Dig. Sue and other fossil hunters started to dig. They used picks and shovels. It took 5 days of teamwork, but at last they reached the bones. Fossil hunters may spend hours searching for pieces of bone. Sue's large jaw held sharp teeth that were 12 inches long. Then Sue's team had to work more carefully. They used smaller tools. They found many bones. The skull was about 5 feet long. That's pretty crazy because I'm 5 foot 1 inch, so think about that. The hunters named this T-Rex Sue. They named her after Sue Hendrickson. The diggers took photographs. They numbered the bones. They wrote notes about them. Some bones were mixed up. Many were just where they were millions of years ago. A few were missing. Diggers need to work carefully to uncover bones. The diggers kept some rock around the bones. That way the bones wouldn't break. They covered the fossils with cloth. It was soaked in plaster. When the plaster dried, it would protect the bones. People fought over the rights to Sue's bones. Finally, Sue's bones found a home. It was the Field Museum in Chicago. The plaster is like a coat people wear on a cast people wear on a broken bone. So that was chapter 2. So what we need to do is think about what were the most important things that we learned from chapter 2. Well, we learned that it took them they used different tools to dig up the bones. We also learned that they ended up naming the dinosaur they found, Sue. Another thing that we noted was that they used plaster to soak the bone, to cover the bones and protect them, and that the Sue, the T-Rex, Sue's bones, ended up in a museum. So to me, those are the important things that we learned. Now, little details like it took 5 days of teamwork. Now that's, it's good to know, but when we're just giving a short little summary, we're not going to have to include those very specific details sometimes. We can be more vague with our summary. So my summary would go something like, the team used different tools to dig up the dinosaur's bones. They ended up naming the dinosaur Sue. They used plaster to soak Sue's bones so that they would be protected. The bones finally ended up in a museum. Do you see how I used my own words? I took the key details that we pointed out that we needed to include in a summary, and I put it all together. Now, if you did not read this chapter with me and I gave you that summary, you would have a pretty good idea of what the chapter was mostly about. Now, would you know the tiny little details? No, but you didn't read it. So a summary is just kind of an overall hitting those main important points. All right, chapter 3, our last chapter. At the museum, Sue's skull took over 3,000 hours to clean. Wow, that's crazy. People at the museum wanted to show off these bones. They had to prepare them first. More than 250 bones had to be cleaned and studied. First, workers removed the plaster. Then they removed the rock around the bones. The team used a CT scanner. This let them see inside Sue's bones. Her skull wouldn't fit in the scanner. The team sent it to a place where they scan airplane parts for problems. Wow, she needed a pretty big scanner then. This is what the scan of Sue's skull looked like. It's pretty crazy. Putting Sue back together was hard. First, the team fixed cracks in the bones with glue. They used a material like molding clay. This helped them repair missing parts of bones. They made models of the missing bones. Putting Sue's bones together was like doing a big puzzle. Yeah, that'd be a very big puzzle. The workers made casts of each bone. Copies of Sue's skeleton could be shown in other places. Then they had to put all the pieces together. This was another hard job. It can take thousands of hours to get a skeleton ready to show. The workers needed a special frame to hold up the bones, but Sue's skull was too heavy. It could not be placed on top, so they made a lighter plastic cast of it. They placed the real skull in a special case. Sue's skull is large and hard to lift. We know that T-Rex had small, strong arms. Huge arm muscles left marks on Sue's arm bones. The scan showed something else, too. Sue had an amazing sense of smell. We also learned that Sue was about 41 feet long. She stood about 12 feet high from the hip. She weighed about 9 tons. She died when she was about 28 years old. Some bones of a T-Rex and a bird look very much alike. Millions of people have now visited Sue. She is the largest T-Rex ever found. Her fossils are the most complete. They are in the best shape. As a result of finding new bones, we learn more about dinosaurs. Studying fossils helps us understand the past. They show us how animals have changed over time. Sue was finally standing tall at the museum. All right, so I want you to think about what we just read. What are some important parts that we mentioned? Well, the cleaning and the putting together of the bones. That was a huge part of this chapter, right? They had to clean the bones, fix the broken bones, fix the missing ones, and they had to put it all together. I think that is pretty important to mention. I also think that the fact that they had to replace some bones, like her skull is not the real one, is important to mention. And then I also think it's important to mention, why is Sue so special? What makes her special? So I want you to go ahead and pause me. This might sound a little bit silly, but I want you to out loud say a summary of what we just read about chapter 3. So go ahead and pause me, do that summary, and then I'm going to go ahead and give you my summary, and we can hopefully have similar ones. All right, so I hope that you guys paused yourselves and practiced your summary. So like I said before, a couple things that I think are important, those main details that we need to mention, is the cleaning, the putting together, the fixing of the bones, putting together bones that were missing. I think the fact that her skull was missing we need to include, and also why it's important that she was discovered. So I would say people then cleaned and repaired any broken bones she had. They also had to create bones that were missing. Sue's skull was so big and heavy, they were not able to put it on the model. It took thousands of hours and people in order to put Sue together in the museum. It is important that Sue was discovered because it helps us learn about the past, and it helps us to learn what dinosaurs were like when they were living. All right, second grade. So you can see how I use those important details to make a summary about what that chapter 3 was about, those most important parts that we read. So before you go, just a quick review. Summarizing is when we take something we read and we condense it down into something shorter. We hit those important parts and details that are needed to understand the story, and we make sure to put it in our own words. This is an important skill and strategy to practice because it can help us remember the story that we read. So if you read something, maybe you summarize it, it'll help you remember it later down the road. And it can also help us understand, maybe we were kind of confused about something, but once we put our thoughts together and kind of put it together in a summary, maybe that helps our brains click. All right, second grade, great job, and I'll see you next time.